What you are staring at is not a selection. It is a trap. Every single bottle on that wall was designed to separate you from your money before a single drop touches your lips. Embossed glass, wax seals, heritage stories printed in gold lettering about founding fathers and frontier legends, price tags that whisper quality into your ear while picking your pocket clean. And it works. Some of the most expensive bottles sitting at eye level contain whiskey that would lose a blind tasting against something collecting dust on the bottom shelf for a third of the price. Today we are tearing the curtain down. Number 8. Koval Bourbon. Chicago has given the world deep dish pizza, the blues, and some of the greatest architecture on the planet. What Chicago has not given the world is bourbon worth $60. Koval opened its doors in 2008. Robert and Sonat Bernecker built the first legal distillery inside city limits since Prohibition shut everything down over a century ago. That fact alone generated headlines. A couple reviving a lost tradition in America's heartland. Organic grains, sustainable practices, small batch integrity. Walk through their tasting room today and you will hear every word of that pitch. What nobody will explain is why you should hand over $50 to $60 for bourbon that spent less than 2 years inside undersized barrels. Their shortcut strategy relies on smaller barrels. More surface area means faster extraction of flavor compounds. Sounds reasonable on paper. In practice, accelerated wood contact pulls tannins and bitterness out of oak long before the slow chemical reactions that create depth and richness have time to develop. You get the harshness of wood without the reward of maturation. Their mash bill throws another curveball. Millet alongside corn. Framed as fearless innovation. In reality, a distraction from whiskey that has not had enough time to become interesting on its own merits. Pour a glass, and the evidence is immediate. Pale color. Raw cereal grain on the nose, followed by acetone sharpness. On the palate, young corn sweetness wrestles with alcohol heat, while wood tannins deliver bitterness instead of complexity. The finish vanishes almost instantly. The only thing that lingers is the receipt. Craft distilling matters, but slapping a premium price tag on whiskey that desperately needs 3 more years of patience is not craftsmanship. Koval is selling impatience dressed in sustainability marketing. Number 7. TX Bourbon. Everything is bigger in Texas, including the gap between marketing promises and what shows up in your glass. Firestone and Robertson built their distillery in Fort Worth in 2011 and immediately leaned into the one thing Texas has that Kentucky does not. Punishing heat. Temperatures inside their aging warehouses swing 70 degrees in a single day. This violent thermal cycle supposedly forces chemical reactions that patient Kentucky maturation needs a decade to achieve. The science is not entirely wrong. Heat does accelerate extraction. Where it falls apart is the leap from faster to better. Those two words do not mean the same thing. Poor TX Bourbon and aggressive young heat announces itself immediately, wearing a disguise labeled Bold Texas Character. Caramel and vanilla exist somewhere in the profile, but both arrive handcuffed to an astringent tannic dryness that dominates everything else. Oak contributes harshness and a puckering quality instead of the warm spice that properly aged bourbon provides. The finish turns dry and faintly sour. The signature of whiskey pushed too hard, too fast. At $35 to $40, Firestone and Robertson price this as though heat and time are interchangeable. A steak seared at maximum heat for 30 seconds is not the same as one slow roasted for hours, even if both reached the same internal temperature. Their flagship bourbon is geography cosplaying as craftsmanship, and at $40, that costume is way too expensive. Number 6. Hudson Baby Bourbon. There is a specific kind of reputation that becomes a prison. Being first, Toodletown Spirits in New York's Hudson Valley released Hudson Baby Bourbon in 2006 and genuinely changed American whiskey. Before that bottle, bourbon meant Kentucky, period. They proved everyone wrong. Then William Grant and Sons acquired the brand for a reported $12 million in 2010. Since that acquisition, Hudson Baby has coasted entirely on the memory of being revolutionary, while charging prices that assume the revolution never ended. $50 currently buys you 375 milliliters, half the standard size. That is $100 per liter for bourbon aged less than 4 years. The liquid confirms that math makes no sense. Aggressive corn sweetness crashes into raw grain spirit. A flash of caramel appears mid-palate and evaporates instantly. The finish delivers heat without warmth. Burn without depth. Whiskey bottled before its time because the business model demanded revenue before the barrels were ready. That price is overpriced. Small barrels do increase wood contact. What no barrel size on earth can do is compress time itself. Hudson Baby earned its place in American whiskey history. That history does not entitle it to charge champagne money for bourbon that still tastes like it is waiting to grow up. Number 5. Jefferson's Ocean. Somewhere in the world right now, a barrel of bourbon is floating across the ocean on a cargo ship, and someone in Kentucky is writing the invoice that will charge you $90 for that experience. Jefferson's does not distill whiskey and never has. They purchase bourbon from established Kentucky distilleries, apply experimental treatments, and sell compelling stories. The Ocean Line, launched in 2012, loads barrels onto ships crossing the equator. Salt air, temperature swings, and constant rocking motion supposedly transform ordinary bourbon into something extraordinary. Every bottle comes adorned with voyage numbers and romantic language about how the sea works its magic. Here is what disappears the moment your credit card clears. Blind tasting after blind tasting produces the same uncomfortable result. Tasters cannot reliably distinguish Jefferson's Ocean from standard Kentucky bourbon that never left the warehouse. The palate offers familiar caramel and vanilla, perhaps a faint mineral quality that might be maritime influence or might be $90 of expectation priming your brain. The texture is pleasant and thoroughly ordinary. Innovation should improve what you taste, not just what you tell friends at dinner. Jefferson's does not sell whiskey. They sell stories, and they are spectacular at it. But your palate does not read marketing copy. Your palate reads liquid. And on that metric, the ocean has nothing interesting to say. Number 4. Angel's Envy. This one hurts, because the origin story is not manufactured. The founding vision was genuinely brilliant, and none of that changes the fact that what sits on shelves today no longer earns the price. Lincoln Henderson spent 4 decades at Brown-Forman shaping Woodford Reserve. In 2011, at 72 years old, he walked out of retirement with an idea nobody else had executed at scale. He finished Kentucky straight bourbon in ruby port wine casks, imported from Portugal. At $45, it was innovation, fairly priced. Bourbon drinkers embraced it. Henderson died in 2013. 2 years later, Bacardi paid $150 million for the brand. They bought a name, a recipe, and a facility. They could not buy the creative mind that made it worth acquiring. Production scaled dramatically. The price climbed past $55. The liquid stayed approximately the same. Not worse, not better. Just no longer special enough to justify the tag in a market where competitors did not stand still. For $55 or less, Elijah Craig delivers more depth. Wild Turkey Rare Breed delivers more intensity. Knob Creek Single Barrel delivers more complexity. Angel's Envy delivers a beautiful curved bottle and a legacy story belonging to a man no longer alive to protect it. Henderson deserved a legacy that kept evolving. Bacardi gave him a spreadsheet. Number 3. Basil Hayden's. This is the entry that should make you genuinely angry. Not because the bourbon is terrible, because the deception is so elegant, you almost have to admire it. That tall, slender bottle with the minimalist label and metal collar band signals refinement before you check the price. At $45 to $50, it occupies the aspirational zone where casual drinkers trade up and gift buyers feel confident. Then you pour it, and the glass reveals what the bottle worked so hard to conceal. Bottled at 80 proof, the absolute legal minimum for bourbon. Jim Beam diluted this spirit as aggressively as federal law allows while still calling it bourbon, soft rye spice that whispers, faint caramel that departs immediately. A finish that does not fade but simply stops existing. Basil Hayden's was engineered for people who think they do not like whiskey. It succeeds by removing everything that makes whiskey worth liking. Here is what transforms disappointment into outrage. The brand honors Basil Hayden Sr., an 18th century distiller famous for bold, high rye bourbon. Jim Beam uses that same mash bill for Old Grandad at higher proofs where the recipe actually works. Basil Hayden's takes the identical whiskey, drowns it in water to the bare legal minimum, wraps it in packaging that cost more than the bourbon, and charges twice the price. The same whiskey, diluted to the legal floor, wrapped in expensive glass, sold at double. Basil Hayden's is not bourbon for bourbon drinkers. It is a $45 bottle of elegant nothing. Those are 6 bottles engineered to extract maximum dollars while delivering minimum bourbon. Fancy glass, frontier mythology, nautical adventures, craft credibility, elegant architecture, all designed to make you feel sophisticated while your wallet gets emptied and your glass gets forgotten. Before we get to the 2 bottles that actually deserve your money, quick ask. If you have ever grabbed a bottle off a shelf because the label looked impressive and then wondered where your money went, you are exactly who this channel is for. We break down what is real and what is marketing in the spirits world, so you never waste another dollar on a pretty bottle with nothing inside. If that sounds useful, subscribe now. It takes 1 second and it means these videos keep coming. Now for the 2 bourbons that tear this entire pricing illusion apart. 2 bottles that prove quality has almost nothing to do with what you pay and everything to do with what a distillery actually puts inside the glass. Number 2, Evan Williams, bottled in bond. You have walked past this bottle 100 times. White label instead of the familiar black. Bottom shelf positioning that suggests budget bourbon for budget drinkers. Every signal tells you to keep moving towards something more impressive. Every single one of those signals is a lie. The Bottled in Bond Act of 1897 exists because America had a whiskey fraud problem so severe the federal government intervened. The bonded designation required whiskey produced at a single distillery during a single season, aged minimum 4 years in a federally bonded warehouse, and bottled at exactly 100 proof. Not marketing standards, legal standards backed by federal oversight. Heaven Hill has honored those standards since the Shapira family founded the company in Bardstown, Kentucky in 1935. No corporate parent, no shareholders demanding margin optimization. The family still owns it outright, which might explain why they keep releasing bourbon at prices that make competitors look greedy. For $15 to $18, the nose opens with rich caramel over toasted oak and vanilla bean. The palate brings brown sugar sweetness, dried fruit, and a spice complexity the standard black label cannot approach. The 100 proof bottling carries genuine weight. The finish lingers with warmth that rewards patience instead of punishing your throat. Bartenders across the country quietly stock this for their own consumption after shifts. It builds old fashions that taste the way they should, with bourbon character strong enough to stand up against bitters instead of disappearing beneath them. At this price, Evan Williams Bottled in Bond is not a compromise. It is an indictment of every brand charging $40, $50, $60 for bourbon that cannot match what Heaven Hill delivers for the cost of a mediocre lunch. Number 1. Old Grandad 114. This is the bourbon that breaks the entire industry. $25 to $30 for a bottle that has no business being this good at this price. The brand traces back to 1840. Basil Hayden Sr., the same man whose name now decorates that elegant $45 bottle, of diluted disappointment we talked about 3 entries ago. His grandson named the Bourbon in his honor, creating one of the oldest continuously produced brands in American whiskey. Not manufactured heritage purchased at auction, not trademark ownership masquerading as tradition. Actual history that lives in every bottle because the recipe never changed. Jim Beam owns Old Grandad today. They use the identical mash bill that goes into Basil Hayden's. Same grain recipe, same distillation process, same Kentucky water, same warehouses. What separates them is what happens after. Basil Hayden's gets diluted to 80 proof and positioned at $45. Old Grandad 114 gets bottled at its namesake proof, put into plain packaging, and shelved where nobody looks. That decision is not accidental. Promoting a $25 bottle means explaining that the same whiskey in a fancier bottle costs double for less proof and less flavor. No marketing department signs off on that campaign. So Old Grandad 114 sits quiet on lower shelves, while every promotional dollar flows toward flashier products. The nose does not care about any of that. It explodes the moment bourbon hits your glass. Baking spice, caramel, and rye grain complexity layered so densely you could spend 5 minutes just breathing it in. The palate delivers wave after wave. Cinnamon first, then vanilla. Toasted oak and dried orange peel arriving in succession. The 114 proof carries serious weight and genuine heat, not the aggressive burn of young whiskey trying to impress. The confident warmth of a bourbon with nothing to prove and everything to show. The finish goes on and on. Minutes after your last sip, warmth radiates through your chest, while spice and caramel ghost across your palate. Rewarding attention without demanding ceremony. Old Grandad 114 proves something uncomfortable. The relationship between price and quality in American whiskey is not just loose. It is inverted. The best value in this entire category has been sitting on bottom shelves for years, hiding behind packaging nobody designed to impress, and a name that sounds like something your grandfather kept in a cabinet nobody opened. At under $30, it delivers everything the bottles above it promise and fail to provide. Complexity, balance, intensity, character. Proof that actually means something. Next time you stand in that bourbon aisle surrounded by embossed glass and heritage stories competing for your attention, ask yourself one honest question. Does that $50 bottle in your hand deliver more than what is sitting 3 shelves below it at half the price? The answer is almost never yes. And the industry is counting on you never bothering to find out.